Hi, guys. Good morning. Welcome back to the Hashira Half Hour. I am going to be your host today. As we discussed last week, I am ever your nervous little class president. I'm Emily. I am joined, as always, by Hana and Bryan.
What's up, everyone? I don't really have anything good this week for explaining me other than Risendeo because I'm watching Tokyo Ghoul.
Love to see it. I'm the Power Ranger sticker of My Hero or My Ranger Academia here. I am Bakugo. I feel like the Black Ranger was pretty dope. And I'm also pretty explosive sometimes. Hey, explosives. Just like our good guy Data right here. Yeah, explosion. Arts and explosion, folks. There you go.
What else could anyone want?
Nothing. Absolutely. Oh, boom, boom. Oh, that's.
How do you go?
Sorry.
Boom, boom.
Boom, boom. Sorry, I'll stop.
Oh, we're in for it today, guys. So today's discussion is going to focus on Demon Slayer episode 15, Mount Natagumo. And we're bringing it back a little bit here to kind of focus in on a theme or an idea. So our theme here is going to be like breaking tradition or breaking like cyclical patterns that you might have had in your life. So we're just going to kick it right off. We start off the episode getting stronger. We have our demon slayers still recuperating a little bit at the Wisteria Bloom household. A doctor comes by and informs them shortly after that they're good to rejoin the fight. And then we get to see Tanjiro's crow come back. And he directs them to head to Mount Natagumo. So for good luck, Hisa, who is the older woman that is kind of like running this little bed and breakfast doctor situation that we got going on, she sends them on their way, striking a spark on a stone and wishing them well in their journeys moving forward. What do you guys think about each of our dynamic trio's reaction to this old tradition?
I mean, obviously the most like visceral reaction is Inosuke's. He takes it as a threat immediately. He's like, what are you doing? And honestly, kind of same. Like, I guess being a boar, head, he's very chaotic and stuff. So from what we know about him, he doesn't have a lot of social context. And we can assume that he probably knows not much about like Taisho era period culture and stuff. So he probably thinks that this is a threat of some sort. Like someone's literally like throwing sparks. I don't know if he's probably seen sparks before either. Because again, he's got a boar head on. He's very animalistic. So he's like, ooh, fire. So I mean, what else are you gonna do? I mean, I kind of feel bad for him, but that's my take on Inosuke there.
I agree. I I love Inosuke. You all know that, but it's just a reminder that like he just doesn't know human interactions. He was literally raised by boars. He doesn't even think that he has like a human parent because he's like, I was raised by boars. He just doesn't understand how things work. So we shouldn't expect him to like understand tradition, let alone just how to act around humans. So it was very on brand, very funny. And I think, Tanjiro's like super annoyed still. You can tell, but he kind of gets over it later. But I think he's starting to realize, okay, maybe Inosuke just genuinely doesn't know any of this stuff and I need to help him. That's why he just like grabbed him and then Zenitsu did all the yelling. It was just very dramatic and very on brand for each one of them.
Yeah. I like the call out that it's just something that Inosuke would have never seen before. And so he's just learning about it as though he's like a little kid. It's interesting though to see Tanjiro and Zenitsu kind of react to it too. I know this was like a very short moment, but I thought that it really set the tone for the rest of the episode. Because you've got Tanjiro, who is, I think, very respectful of the old traditions, partially because that's just how he was raised. And so, this isn't something that he hasn't seen before. And it seems like Zenitsu's seen this before as well. But even Zenitsu calms down a little bit because he was like just last episode, like screaming every time this old lady popped up. And now he's like yelling at Inosuke instead and is like, what are you doing? Like, be more respectful. This is like, this is tradition. So It's interesting. I also think it's interesting that they chose like this particular tradition of like striking the spark for good luck, because like we've talked about before, I do think that that's kind of Tanjiro's thing. He's a child born of coal. We've talked about that a little bit. He's the spark that kind of ignites the rest of the revolution, which we'll get to a little bit later, but like I just think it's like conspicuous timing.
Not both Bryan and I being like, we never put that together just by our faces. I didn't even think about that. I've always loved, like, obviously that's a Japanese tradition, and I've always loved like how rich Demon Slayer is in those traditions. But I never put those two together. Like it correlates with the story so well. Wow, Emily, profound.
Literally, that's gonna be. We need to go back and snip this later because both of our faces are meme worthy right there. Oh God, it was bad.
We're both like.
Well, cool. All right. Yeah, I think that it sets the tone really well for the rest of the story. But moving on a little bit and away from a brief moment, though one that I absolutely loved. Our trio continues their journey. They approach this mountain, which is kind of the main peak, if you will, of the story. Night starts to creep in, and we see each of them individually rely on some of their instincts as they approach this new battle. So, of course, we're going to start with our leading man, Tanjiro. He, as always, has his super keen sense of smell, and right away he's able to detect a strange scent that renders him immobile temporarily because he's freaked out. What do you think is causing this? Do you think, like, is this a trauma response? Is this a completely fresh reaction to imminent danger? Is there anything cyclical about this, or does he break his own kind of tradition in any way here?
Well, it's interesting because it's really the first time that a scent scares him so much that he freezes up. I mean, even like Muzan's scent, his first instinct was to run to him. Like he was ready to throw down the man that slaughtered his entire family. So it's definitely new. I think it might just come with the fact that he now has experienced more battles, and with that comes a little bit of mental wear and tear on your brain, because he's understanding now, okay, like something that ominous, I've almost died multiple times in these fights, so that can alone like cause someone to freeze up. So kind of breaking his own tradition, because he tends to kind of run head first into battles and thinks while he does it rather than thinks before. So it's definitely different for him, and adds more layers to the onion. Don't judge me like that, Bryan. I can see your face.
All right. So I actually really, really like this moment. I was going to use this for my favorite moment, but the reason why I like this moment so much is because, first, the sound design. We've talked about sound design a couple of times, and when you see that red aura come across the screen, it's like that like wave sound coming over, but it's not like a calming wave, it's like an eerie one, and it's almost very ASMR. I had my husband run like the clip back once or twice, because watching that aura, hearing the sound, and then seeing Tanjiro's fist clench at the same time was all like shivers down my spine. Getting to the actual question, though, I agree with Hannah on the sense that like he now understands what that scent means, right? Like first time he ran at Muzan, he was like, I don't know what this means, but it's bad. I go towards bad, I make bad go away. Now he's understand, maybe I don't go make bad. Maybe I got a plan about the bad, right? And I think the cycle kind of here is that he's like understanding his approach in like these situations, because he's been here before, right? We understand that. He's had the moment where he's like, oh God, demon, I smell it. It's like coming. What do I do from here? And so I think he's consciously making the choice based on his past experiences to try and make the situation he's going into with demons better, right? Like he's trying to prepare and think about like how he can respond to this situation with very minimal information on just a smell. So he is being a lot more cautious and trying to be like, okay, what can I do to make like less people in pain and try and like avoid the situation that maybe happened to my family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I feel like they say something along the lines of like pain is the best teacher or something, right? It's like, it's not as simple as that, but I mean, obviously he is like, I think every time he encounters demons, he is reliving some of that trauma that he experienced that kickstarted this whole story. But just like even on a more recent note, he, I think, keenly realizes that he's fighting with a very human body, and he just finished healing. And this is like almost another tradition that we could talk about, or like breaking tradition, maybe not yet, but just being sent right back into the thick of battle, like the minute that the doctor says, like, all right, you're okay enough to like be walking around. You know, there's just like not a lot of rest for them. And so, cruel or not, it is what it is. But I think that like the more that he is immediately hurt, the more he's going to be trying to think about how can I possibly try to avoid that, so that, you know, I don't have like this downtime where I would need to be recovering. And also, I just don't want to feel that pain. Like, I just don't want to be hurt. It's like no good. So,
Yeah,
like working in a warehouse for a large corporation.
It's interesting because I think about the way, like, I've never experienced like an injury like a broken bone or anything too major. I've like sprained ligaments in my knees. And the thing is, once I'm fully healed, I never just jump back into action no matter what I do. Like earlier this year, I stupidly went skating, and I was just skating laps around the rink, hit a rut, and fell on my knee really hard. And my knees hurt like for 2 weeks or 2 months after that. It's finally like feeling better, but I still feel like when I go to like the gym, or if I get back on the ice, like it's still hindering me because I'm like scared of hurting it again. And I'm scared of re-injuring or just feeling pain again. So it's like even something so small like that wears on my brain. Like you have to imagine like escalating that by like 100% and being like, I can injure myself so hard that I will die. So that has to do something to your brain and cause you to maybe freeze up a bit. Even someone like Tanjiro, who's so brave and strong, like, yeah, I would be like, okay, wait, give me a moment here.
Kind of reminds me of that one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Do you guys remember the episode? Oh God, why can't I think of the name of the place? It's the beach house that they go to. Ember Island, where Azula's like, they're playing volleyball against those like group of like strangers, and she's like, that one in the back, she has a small injury on her knee, she maybe had a child. I was like, oh God, like every time like Tanjiro goes to that, like, is he thinking about like, I broke my leg last time, or I got like slaughtered in the face by a drum? Like, what are you gonna do, right?
No, but for real, like it's like, and I think we've already seen him do that a little bit. Like when he was fighting in the Suzumi mansion, like he was already injured. And so we kind of saw him like thinking like, oh, I need to be like really conscious about this because I might only have so many moves. So like, what are my chess moves here that I can do before my body expires?
It's true.
Right.
Your body goes through and your brain goes through like all that learning process. It changes the way like you work.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else about Tanjiro before we move on to our next Demon Slayer? Okay. Well, Inosuke is next. So we see his distinct reaction as well. And this is one of the first times, if not the first time, that we are able to see him utilize his beast breathing technique. Really cool animation there. Also, really cool moment for like this technique and the first time that we're seeing it. But on a smaller note, we know that he's an extremely reactionary individual. Is there anything cyclical or repetitive in his actions as he races headfirst into the mountains? And on that note, is there anything he does that actually breaks tradition for him too?
Yeah, so obviously Inosuke, first time we saw him, he was literally bouncing on a child. Now we see him following Tanjiro's orders. Like, he's like, oh, you want me to find the demon? I got it. Let me find this demon. Like, I feel like Tanjiro has figured out how to use Inosuke as like another demon slayer in battles. So I think that's really cool in this moment. He's also like, able to kind of think about what he's doing, right? Because he uses his beast breathing, he figures out where the demon is, and then they start running towards it together. At least he was able to follow an order this time. And I think that's where he's breaking his tradition. Is like, this is the moment where maybe like it's a critical moment or like a core memory for Inosuke because he's learning like how to interact with other people. And I think that starts to bring him into the fold of like being less of a boar and being more of a human by working together with other people. And I think that's his tradition breaking, is like the understanding of animals versus the understanding of humans, which is really cool.
Yeah, he's definitely breaking tradition. I mean, we talk about like the animation and the sound design a lot, and they specifically keep showing him with these like little bubbles around him when people are talking to him nicely. And I think that's just showing that he's like feeling these feelings of like affection because these people are being so nice to him, and he's so confused by it. But he's just like, it, even like in the mountain when Tanjiro's speaking nice to him and he's feeling that feeling, he freezes, which is very unlike Inosuke, because Inosuke is the one that kind of got Tanjiro to move into the mountain. Like Tanjiro's like, I gotta go, and Inosuke's like, all right, let's do this, you know. So it's definitely different for him. And also, I would just like to throw out there, I remember this moment very specifically. The very first time I watched this show, this beast breathing, I think it was 7th form spatial awareness. Seismic sense. Come on. It's just like Toph.
I agree. I mean, honestly, I do that all the time. Like, I always be using spatial awareness. Like, when I'm in the store, I'm like, who's behind me? Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to, like, step on someone's toes in the aisle or something. So I'm like, who?
Oh, our sweet boy Inosuke. All the spatial awareness in the world, but no social awareness whatsoever.
So true.
It's a good moment. It's like I think we finally see him get serious for like a second, like a brief moment. Granted, what serious means for him, I think, is something very different than what we maybe expect of our characters, given that like the bar is set up here with Tanjiro. But it's a good moment, and it's a moment where he actually listens. So for me, I think that's kind of like where he breaks the tradition of himself that we've seen so far. He's been like very resistant to suggestions without kind of being offered like the counter argument for it so that he can just argue, I think. But he has to hear it a few times before he's willing to listen. But then he does finally listen to what Tanjiro is asking. He's like, so you just need me to find where they are, right? And then he does it. And so it's like he's finally kind of starting to pitch in like with the teamwork a little bit. So I think that he is beginning to break that tradition for himself and maybe getting ready to start a new one.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like this moment is supposed to be him kind of arguing and trying to be right. But I even love the moment where he was like, don't these demon slayers know it's taboo for us to fight each other? Which is like a direct call from Tanjiro fighting him like 2 episodes ago. And it's like, yeah, he's kind of saying that to be like, I know this, I'm better than you. But it shows that he like remembers and like can discern that maybe, hey, Tanjiro sometimes might have something good to say, and maybe I need to learn from that, even though he tries to spin it around to make him like the leader of it.
I mean, also, let's not forget that like when they like strolled up on the forest, he like almost punched a guy in the face. And I think he was like, that was like his reminder. Like mom was like, remember, we can't do that, Inosuke. Like, that's not right. And he's like, yes. Yes, we already agreed to this.
Yes, Mother Tanjiro.
Mama.
And then he headbutted Tanjiro in the stomach at some point during this episode. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Our boy.
Chaotic energy. Love to see it.
We love to see it. And hopefully there will be much more where that has come from. Okay. So of course, we've talked about Tanjiro. We've talked about Inosuke. I think it's time to chat a little bit about our resident crybaby, Zenitsu. His part that he plays in this arc is some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen in any anime, and I can't wait for something that's coming up really soon. And one moment that I think might possibly be superior in the dubbed version. But anyway, this exact moment, you'll notice he firmly plants himself right where he is as usual and has an adamant refusal to go into the woods. You know, he's like, this is dangerous. I'm not interested. You guys can do what you want. I'm going to stay right here. And then like a little bit later, we see him with his little sparrow. He's starting to feel sorry for himself. He's like, if I had real friends, they would have tried to convince me to go in. And the sparrow's like, no, just don't be a baby and like go do your job, dude. And he's like not hearing it. He's not interested until he realizes that there's something that's in the forest that's worth fighting for. In what ways do you think that this breaks tradition for him?
I don't know if it really breaks tradition for him, because from what we've known from him so far is that he is a crybaby, check. He is scared, check. And he is a bit of a, not really like a womanizer, but kind of, like he's very obsessive about women. And I think we kind of glossed over the very beginning of this episode where he's literally chasing Nezuko around and Tanjiro has to chase him because he's like, bruh, that's my sister. Like, stop. And so the fact that it was Nezuko that is the reason that he just was like, I gotta run in, was very on brand for him and very traditional. I think the only thing that really broke his tradition is that he already cares about Nezuko enough that he's willing to just say, all right, I'm going to run into this place that is scary and has demons and I don't want to be there. But if it means saving her, then I will do it. But it all still like checks out for Zenitsu, in my opinion.
Yeah. Zenitsu in this moment, honestly, me every morning, right? Like, I'm not going in, I'm not doing it. And then, the sparrow in my mind is like, hey, bud, no, they are your true friends. You just gotta get in there with them. They'll help you, I promise. I think it is a reinforcement of tradition too, right? We've talked about it before that he doesn't do anything except for something else that's motivating, some exterior motivation, right? And he wants to take Nezuko out of the box, if you will, to try and like be eventually a wife of some sort. So I think Zenitsu really is following his own pattern here. However, I would say that like his reaction time and his ability to process all of his emotions getting quicker, right? Like he's getting better at getting over his anxiety. And I think that's where his character arc comes through, is that like he's relatable and he's growing. Like, is it stunning, stellar? Absolutely not. Is it slow? Is it at least 1% better? Could argue, maybe. And so that's why I think like this scene for Zenitsu is really important. Like, listen, Dorito Man sometimes gets a little like crusty, okay? Like sometimes he's a little like off the wall, but he's trying. And that's where I hang tight and that's where I hold strong with him.
I think so. He is trying maybe more than he was. And that's, for me, I think that's like the broken tradition here for him. We have seen him kind of do his womanizer thing one time so far, I believe, and it's like right when we first met him. But there's something different between that random woman on the road and Nezuko. I think there's like a love at first sight kind of thing, and like whether or not it's entirely appropriate in these circumstances, like that's a different conversation. But I don't think he would have like run into that house for that other lady. He was trying to like be like, hey, please marry me because I'm gonna go die soon anyway, and I really don't want to go, and blah 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 blah. But this is like, I feel like all of that just like totally escapes his mind in this moment, because he's like, oh my gosh, he's like, Tanjiro took Nezuko with him. She's in there. How could he bring her somewhere so dangerous? I'm going in. And it's like, it's not even like from that moment, a second thought for himself. That's like his own safety, I think, in that moment. He's willing to be brave for somebody else. So kind of cute, kind of creepy.
Baka, 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 baka. Baka. Sorry.
I think it's funny.
This is what happens when we record on a weekend instead of a weekday. My brain is
literally
wild.
Wild and out. All right, guys. Well, anything else about our 3 demon slayers before we move on?
Yeah, we're wild and out. These demon slayers be moving now. Catching fish like moving trout. Naruto gave you the
Benefit of the doubt.
I don't know. Hashira Half Hour raps.
Oh boy.
Mixtape
We're gonna
coming
get
soon.
banned from Spotify. Oopsie.
I just want to say that I love them, and I love the trio that they're growing into becoming, even though Zenitsu was literally left behind by the other two without a
Literally.
second thought.
It's
Oh
fine.
my gosh. He literally, and he just sat there. He's probably like all cold and uncomfortable. He's like, I wish I had real friends. Oh man. All right. Well, we love our trio, but there are some other compelling characters that we get to see in this episode too. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about them. So speaking about our demons a little bit here, we only see very brief glimpses of them in this episode. We'll see more soon, but we are aware that these are like spider demons. We see the use of spiders and the webs to manipulate a lot of demon slayers already, or their corpses that are here on Mount Natagumo. So we've seen kind of like their techniques and their abilities. From the dialogue we've heard, we've gathered a little bit of like a reasoning behind why they're doing this as well. And it's that they somehow make up a nuclear family of sorts. There's more than one spider demon. We've seen so far what appears to be a child and a mother. How do you think that this speaks to tradition? We've seen Tanjiro and Nezuko work, after she's become a demon as a small, like, two-piece family. I wouldn't necessarily call that conventional or nuclear, though. Can demons make a family? What do you think?
I thought this is a really interesting concept. And so it's going to be a little bit of not a tangent, hopefully not. But I think this is a kind of a good arc or a good thing to talk about. So we're looking at this first spider demon we see them fighting against, right? We see them being used as puppets. I think puppetry in anime or as like a technique is really interesting because it speaks to not just, fighting style, but it also speaks to character motives, and it speaks to like manipulation and using other people. And I think that's like kind of a first tell that we can see, right? Like that maybe we're going to see a family, but we're going to see a dysfunctional family because of what we see with how they interact with other people. We can kind of tell that if like people are using puppetry and the way that they're using these other people, it's probably a very similar instance with whatever we know, come to know about this family. And I think that's what's really important here is that we're seeing kind of a fighting style that tells us a lot about the characters. Quite literally pulling the strings to put something together. It may be a family of some sort, a broken family, maybe. I'm not going to give away more, but, very interesting way to put it.
TBD. Yeah, we've really only seen two other demons work together, and that was back at the very beginning with Susumaru, and I can't remember the arrow demon's name, but they worked together kind of strangely, but every other time we've interacted with demons, they work alone, and if there's other demons around, they get annoyed or they fight each other, and that's how we get out. So it definitely brings something different to the table. It's hard to imagine like an actual demon family because I feel like demons have a slightly different DNA system, so it's kind of hard to understand how that would work. So again, TBD, but it definitely kind of changes up the story, and you can tell kind of confuses the characters a little bit. Like, why, what, a family? When we see one of the spider demons up above on the, webs, and he's like, "Mother will kill you," and Tanjiro's like, "Mother? What? Like family? Huh?" He's so confused by it, but it can cause the slayers to maybe freeze up and get confused, which can then make, the demon's abilities to take them on a lot better. So it's going to be an interesting arc.
Absolutely, it is. It's strange, something that we talked about in a previous episode as well, but we haven't brought back up in a while, is that it's almost dangerous for demons to make these kind of connections because of Muzan's rage too. Like, and he, it's been established that like he knows what they're doing. Like anyone that is like his progeny, like he is aware of what is going on with them and what they're thinking, and if they break any of the rules, kind of thing. And part of the idea is that they all exist in fear of him. And so that if they ever did team up, it could be really dangerous for him. So it makes me wonder, again, kind of like you said, like how functional is this family going to be, that it wouldn't be something that he's stepped in to intervene with a little bit.
Mhm.
Because it sounds like, we know about 2 so far. There might be more that we haven't seen yet. And so depending on how many there might be, that could be something that would pose a threat to him as well. And so it's interesting that the Demon Slayers have to come try to snuff it out. And maybe that's his plan. I'm just going to let them fight this out on their own. But it's interesting that he hasn't come up yet, I think.
Mhm.
Cool. Good call outs all around here. We'll see a little bit more about these demons in the following episode, so we can talk about them a little bit more as they come up. But we get another glimpse at a few more characters again here too. We get to see a few of our Hashira and our Demon Slayer core leader, Uba Yoshiki. Again, a brief moment, but he receives news from his crow that many Demon Slayers, or what he calls his children, have already died fighting out at Mount Natagumo. Once that happens, that is when he finally decides to send a few Hashira into the fold. And, we saw like an interaction kind of like this in the mountain very briefly, where one of the Demon Slayers is like, what? They sent like rank Mizunoto. Like we need Hashira. Like, can't you see what's going on here? It's hundreds of us. So it's interesting that he waits so long, I think, to send in some Hashira when he's received this news. Why do you think that is? Do you think that's part of tradition as well, or is it strictly strategy?
I mean, there's 9 Hashira and hundreds of Demon Slayers, and I think Hashiras are like in charge of like a region or something, and they're kind of out and about, like they have a lot like on their plate. So I'm wondering if maybe just none of them were available until this time. I think there's a lot of reasons why. I think it's easy to say that maybe he just waited too long, but you already kind of get the sense that this person, Master Ubuyashiki, kind of seems to know what he's doing. I won't get too much into that, but I think he also is probably hoping for like a lower ranking Demon Slayer to kind of make a name for themselves, because it seems that we've just been having these issues of these lower ones just being slaughtered before they can really become something. So he's kind of hoping to give them the chance, maybe kind of an Irwin mindset, like the bad ones just die, like you got to sacrifice them. I don't know, but there's a lot going on, and being in charge of something so big and so crazy can be a very difficult job. So there's a lot that's going into that decision, I think. But I'm very excited about Shinobu and Gyu.
I like your comparison to Irwin. And I think kind of taking the opposite side, right? Not like that the weak will die and the strong will survive, but that they knew what they were getting into when they decided to put that jacket on, right? Like you had to make it through final selection, which was 2 weeks in the forest. So, I mean, what's going on at that point, and every mission may be your last. So I think at that point, right, like he's saying, like, we need you to go. And kind of like you touched on, Hannah, like resource management, right? Like Gyu could have very well been like, nah, man, I'm at a different mountain. I'm like 3 days away. Like, Ubu, no. And Shinobu was like, like, can you reschedule, maybe? Like, can a demon go away? So, like, kind of things like that. But also, right, I do think it might be tradition, right? Like, Hashira are supposed to be like the elite top tier. We know that there's multiple levels of demon slayers. And so, Hashira are probably your finishers. Like, you're not just going to pull your trump card immediately. And so I think that really it's a demonstration of Uyashiki's leadership is like, while a lot of leaders would probably just throw everything at it, now you have hopefully someone who's survived long enough at this point to be able to speak to the demon abilities, right? Like, hopefully by the time the Hashira get there, they're either like worn down and tired and we can maybe like finish them off easy, or at least we have info on them and the Hashira can take the information from any survivors at that point and then form a battle strategy, right? Because you have an entire team. Your team knows that there are people on the way. So if they can survive for maybe 5 minutes longer, maybe that we can get something out of this mission, right? So maybe it's a little bit of that too, that the tradition is we don't send them into the last second when we really need them.
Yeah. I think that that's fair. And I think that's probably the theory that I agree with the most. I think that that is what it is. I do think it's a double-edged sword, though. Even though I agree that that is probably the tactic, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, I think, because their whole ethos, right, is like, we are fighting to protect human lives. And like, yes, like those are demon slayers. They signed up for what they were doing and like they knew what they were getting themselves into. But like to let so many of them die without trying to assure that that doesn't happen by sending in maybe some of the better players, it's interesting. It's a choice.
It's a tough call that the three of us have never been in, obviously.
Mhm.
So it's tough to
You've
know.
never sent someone to die for your
No,
cause?
I've never been in charge of an entire military corps, but I plan to never be either. No thanks.
Oh, okay,
I
you're
can't
right.
handle that pressure. I can barely handle reading manga without crying my eyes out to sleep. Myself to sleep. So, you know, don't put me in charge of that kind of thing. But something I found interesting is like this episode's the first time we hear the word Hashira. When they've been explaining the ranks, they haven't even told them about Hashira. And you can kind of get the sense that they're hella important. So, you know, you also kind of have to wonder if like they have to wait until like it is absolutely positively sure that they need to send in a Hashira, because losing a Hashira is going to be like a very, very big stab at the Demon Slayer Corps, because you need those people like that are so skilled and so strong to help fight like the big ones, the upper moons, you know. And maybe he's just waiting till it feels like an upper moon battle. Otherwise it feels like it's not really important to send them there and get them injured when they could be fighting harder battles. I don't know. I'm just spewing.
Yeah. It's all good points. It is interesting though, and I'll be interested to see how it's or like, you know, the strategy is kind of like employed in future battles too. If this is considered like a small enough one for season 1. So it's still very big, I think, in the scope of things, but I think that kind of ties up most of the moments of breaking tradition that I wanted to discuss. Is there anything else in the episode that you guys wanted to bring up before we move on to favorite moments?
Actually, yes. I want to talk about the moment that Giyu had with Shinobu, their conversation. She's like, oh, Shinobu was like, oh, only if demons and humans could get along. And Giyu responded with, well, as long as demons are eating humans, then, you know, this is going to continue. And we've seen Giyu at the forefront of that, right? We've seen him protect a demon at that point. And I think that's also this tradition of change, right? To see demons maybe as an ally. I think maybe that's like him planting the seed almost, if you will, because he's seen someone and protected them and sent them through training. And now, you know, this creates a different dynamic for not only Tanjiro, but also Giyu as he goes through demons, right? Tanjiro has shown himself and proved himself in that moment by standing up for Nezuko. And now he's changed the opinion of a Hashira. And this Hashira is now attempting to, you know, shift the opinions of other Hashira. And it's really, you get to see that large like chain effect, almost like a derivative, like you're seeing the change within the change, if you will. So it's really interesting.
Maybe a little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come.
Dun, dun, dun.
Bum, bum.
I also, when it comes to tradition, with this episode, it's not breaking tradition, but I felt the same way I think at the beginning of the Suzumi Mansion arc was this show kept the tradition of balancing those slap happy moments with like really creepy eeriness and a little bit of action. Obviously, we didn't get a ton in this episode. It's to kind of come to the climax of this battle, but they're really keeping that tradition of one moment you're belly laughing, the next you're like, this is really creepy. I feel like I'm practically watching a horror anime. So really love that dynamic that they can create with the show. It never feels like wrong to be laughing one moment and then feeling really creeped out the next. It just like gels really well. So I felt they kept the tradition of doing that really well in this episode.
I think that the show reflects the sentiments really well.
Mhm.
The whole idea, I think, so far is that Tanjiro and Nezuko have set something in motion that is breaking tradition and like breaking any set precedents that might exist. The show has already done that a couple ways too. Like we totally skipped like a training arc. Like that is extremely unconventional for most shonen animes. And you know, there are like a list of other things too. That's the first that comes to mind. But it's like the structure of the story reflects the intention, I think. It's pretty cool. Cool. All right, guys. For the sake of time, let's go ahead and transition to our favorite moments from this week's episode. I'll go ahead and go first. I feel like we talked about a lot of good moments already. I like a lot of them. I like the striking of the stone at the beginning. I thought that was really symbolic and cool. But something that I just think is like sweet and funny is when Tanjiro finally exercises some patience with Inosuke and thanks him for keeping him company as they trudge into the woods of the mountain. And Inosuke's like sort of bashful but like prideful reaction is just so sweet and funny to me. He's just a little kid. Like he's grown, but like in his mind, he's just like a little kid, just like learning like basic social etiquette. And I think he's a little bit proud of himself here because he's like, oh, did I like do something right? Like, am I maybe making a friend? Even if he's not consciously thinking that, I think it's like a visceral reaction in him and it's just so cute. So that's mine.
Little bubbles.
Oh, I think my favorite moment also stems from Inosuke. But it's when we see the demon standing on the spider lines like above them, right? And he jumps and he committed to this jump. Full blown miss. And then that demon just walks away like nothing happened. Like, are you kidding me? Like, most savage thing you can do to an enemy is either start writing a diss rap about them in the middle of your fight or literally just walking away from them. And dear Lord, I was laughing so hard. I was just like, my God, like, what does that tell me about this demon that he's not even going to pay attention to the fact that someone tried to come for him and just utterly failed? Like, no, like, bashful comment back, just like, and done. Was dead.
I love it.
Inosuke has so many just lovable moments. I love him. My favorite moment was actually at the very beginning. Again, just like a slap happy moment. I just absolutely adored the chasing each other around. I can't explain why I loved it so much. I feel like I say that a lot of my favorite moments, but first you got Zenitsu like chasing Nezuko because he's like in love with her already, and Tanjiro's chasing him because he's being the protective big brother. I'm like, bro, like stop being so creepy with my sister. And then Inosuke is like hungry and tired and has this interaction with Hisa, is like, why is this lady so nice to me? Why am I feeling these things? And then goes straight back to being Inosuke and like runs in and starts chasing them for no apparent reason. And Nezuko's just like watching from the side now because the three of them are chasing each other. Chaotic. I love this friendship. It's one of my absolute favorite like main trios in any piece of media because that trio being the main characters is a very common trope, and almost everything that I've enjoyed in like the past has always been a trio. Their dynamic is so chaotic and funny and emotional and fun, and this is just like the start of this wonderful friendship, and it's just my favorite moment. I can't explain.
Oh, our good boys. We love them.
Best
boys.
They're so special to me.
All right, guys. Well, I think that about does it. I feel like we're already like over time for this week. So I'm just going to thank you for riding it out with us. There's a lot to talk about. We might run a little bit long these next couple weeks too, because it really is a good arc. But thank you for your time and for choosing to spend a little bit of it with us this weekend. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, do all the things. If you leave us a question in the comments on any of our platforms, you might get to see us answer it in a future episode. And we just really appreciate you listening in today. We'll see you all next time. Umai.
Umai.
Umai.